Hello everyone, I am Cecile Quintanilla and I have a question for you. Have you ever wanted maybe a pet insect before? For example, a pet butterfly, a pet beetle, maybe even a little bee. If any of these things interest you, please watch this video in its entirety. Because I currently have a license through the state of California to ethically collect, raise, breed, and one day sell insects to California residents. If you aren't in California, I do wish to tell you this. While I'm starting only in California, I do plan on expanding to nearby states like Arizona, Colorado, then eventually moving on to Texas, then to Louisiana, and slowly making my way towards the East Coast. So if you wish to follow my journey in selling and collecting insects, please feel free to follow. Additionally, there is a GoFundMe linked in this video. You do not have to donate, even just sharing counts, but since I'm looking to start this business, I do need funding for shelves, lights, plants, food for the insects, a lot of separate things that add up to around $1,000. I know that's a lot to ask for in this current economy. However, just sharing is more than enough, and I will be grateful for that. Furthermore, if you choose to donate, every dollar you donate, I will donate an equivalent amount over the course of 1 to 2 years to my local community. How I will do this is through creating a little enclosure for an insect pet, primarily a ladybug. I will include lights, food, plants, everything it needs to thrive, and then I will donate this kit to local schools, primarily elementary schools, and I will do a presentation, the kids will see the insect, and they'll feel closer to nature. Additionally, I will also donate to my local community gardens in the form of beneficial insects. These beneficial insects will help prevent pests and actively combat them, such as a ladybug eating mealybugs or aphids, or a hoverfly pollinating fruit. Okay, now that you've heard this, let's go into the insects that I plan on collecting. There are multiple groups. The first group of insects that I would plan on collecting would be the coleopetrans, otherwise known as beetles. Within this group, I would collect from three main families. The first one is the carabid family, otherwise known as the ground beetle family. These are predaceous beetles. They are medium to small size, and they would be ideal as pets or as pest control agents as they eat slugs and snails. The second family is the coccinellid family, otherwise known as the ladybug family. These would be ideal as pets or as pest control agents as they eat aphids, mites, mealybugs, etc. The final family is called the malrid family, or otherwise known as the flower beetle family. These, as larvae, eat soil-dwelling insects, and then as adults they pollinate flowers, so they would have a dual purpose as first pest control, then pollination. The second group of insects that I plan on collecting from are the dipterans, otherwise known as flies. And yes, this doesn't sound great. However, they're not the dookie flies that hang out in the dookie, okay? Did you know that flies are actually the second most efficient pollinators in the world, second only to bees? And yes, even the dookie flies do pollinate, but we won't be talking about those. Anyway, the first group of flies I plan on collecting are acilids. These are otherwise known as robber flies. I only plan on collecting one species, but it vaguely resembles a dragonfly and it eats aphids, so it's novel, as pest control or maybe even a pet. The second group of flies that I plan on collecting are siphoids. These are the famous hoverflies. They're very beneficial in your garden because they first, as larvae, eat aphids, mites, everything basically, and once they're older, they pollinate. The third group of insects are actually bees, and you might be concerned thinking that they'll sting you, and the answer is typically yes, most bees can sting. However, there are three lineages of stingless bees in the world, and America happens to have all three of them native to the region. The first group is the Meliponidae, otherwise known as stingless honeybees. These bees most closely resemble real honeybees in their behavior because they have a queen, they exist as a colony, they do produce some honey. Actually, some people do farm them. It's more of a delicacy though. They don't produce as much honey as real honeybees, but they're native to Florida and other tropical regions of America. The second group of stingless bees is subfamily Pangurinae, otherwise known as ground nesting bees. However, note that the term ground nesting can refer to a lot of other lineages of bees. This group of bees is actually solitary, meaning that each queen is actually its own worker. They can nest communally though, and usually tend to, but that only means that each bee has neighbors, not that they're actually working together. This group of bees actually contains the bees that I will be collecting from. It also contains the world's smallest bee, which I also will be collecting. It's known as Peridita minima. The final group of stingless bees is tribe Dioxini, otherwise known as stingless cuckoo bees. If you've ever heard of a cuckoo bird, they are named after them because they act similar. So what this bee does is rather devious. It lays its egg within the host nest of a different species of bee. Then that baby bee, that parasitic bee, eats the host, eats its food, and then fully develops into a bee. Once that parasitic bee emerges from its host nest, the cycle then repeats itself. Now, what's interesting besides the parasitic behavior is that this group of bees is actually rarely seen in anywhere that it's native to, and it's native to a lot of parts of the world. Now that you know about bees, the group of bees that I plan on collecting from is the Andreanid family. From within this family, I would collect subfamily Pangurinae members. Now, since this group of bees contains the world's smallest bee, it technically could be kept in a large enough terrarium, maybe a 50-gallon. I'd have to do the math first. But most importantly, they would be used primarily as pollination. They are ground nesting bees, so they always have a home to come back to, meaning they won't just leave when you let them outside. I will include instructions on how to build them their home. Now comes the final group of insects, the Lepidopterans, otherwise known as butterflies and moths. This group as a whole would be best kept as pets, either indoors or outdoors within an enclosed area. Okay, the first group of butterflies or moths is the Geometrid family, otherwise known as Geometrid moths. These are the famous inchworms. If you've ever seen a little worm that goes like doop, doop, that goes like that, that's an inchworm. However, the ones I will be selling won't be garden pests, and they eat different foods that aren't in your garden. The second group of butterflies are the Lycaenids, otherwise known as gossamer wing butterflies. These are usually a pale dusty blue. They're rather small, so if you have concerns about space, this is the group that I would recommend for you. The third group of butterflies are the nymphalids, otherwise known as brush-footed butterflies. The reason why they're called this is because their lower pair of legs are often reduced and not really used in walking, so they more resemble a brush. These include the more famous butterflies such as the red admiral, the Gulf fritillary, and the monarch. The fourth group of butterflies that I plan on collecting are the Papiliononids. At least I think that's how you pronounce it. Anyway, they're the swallowtail butterflies. If you've ever seen a butterfly that has little tails, it could be a swallowtail. It could be another group of butterflies, as that has evolved multiple times. But the largest group are the swallowtails. The fifth group of butterflies are the Pierids, otherwise known as white and sulfur butterflies. What's interesting about this group is that when they're pupating, they use the waste products to produce the pigments that they use on their wings. The sixth group of lepidopterans are cecids, otherwise known as clearwing moths. These are peculiar moths that mimic wasps. They don't look like regular moths at all. They also have clear wings, which is why they're called that. The final group of lepidopterans are sphingids, otherwise known as sphinx moths. These moths resemble hummingbirds in the sense that they can hover and fly around, They also have very chunky, fuzzy bodies. Okay, now that you know about the groups of insects that I would collect, here's how you can help. I'm currently looking for funding to start this business idea, and for every dollar you donate, I will donate an equivalent amount to my local community within Los Angeles County. How I will do this is not through a cash donation. Instead, I will donate a terrarium with an insect, with lights, with plants, with food, with everything it needs to local schools. I will then do a presentation about the wildlife of California, particularly insects, and yeah. Additionally, I will also donate beneficial insects to local community gardens that they can use for pest control. So if any of this interests you, please feel free to either donate or share this GoFundMe page. Anything helps, every dollar counts, and I will make sure it goes back to my community. Furthermore, if you have any questions, please go to the GoFundMe page. I have a lot of questions that are answered there in a Google document. I also have my license with my address censored out for my privacy. And yeah, feel free to just read that if you like. Finally, I do plan on expanding my license to be able to collect, breed, and sell to other areas, first close to California, then eventually towards the middle, then eventually towards the East Coast. So if this journey interests you, please feel free to follow. I will post regular updates. Thank you. Bye.